And welcome to Thursday. You already know what time it is. Today is Thursday. I'm too close to the mic. Um, and welcome to Jazz Cats on WJZZ Cool TV. I am your host, Dawn Elizabeth, and I hope this day finds everybody doing spectacularly well. Been kind of busy. If you tuned in last Thursday, it was the show from Cola Lounge in Farmington Hills with Nathan L. Mitchell from Tampa. And I was actually in Miami last Thursday. Thank you. Um, to witness my nephew Marcus and Brittany get married in Miami last weekend. So I'm hoping everybody had a chance to tune in and check out the show. So I have a new niece. So congratulations to Marcus and Brittany Webb. And so if you're tuning in with me tonight, I am so happy to have my girl, my boss,
That's funny.
the amazing Gaylen McKinney. Welcome to Jazz Cats.
Hey, hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you tonight?
All right. Hello, everybody out there.
Yes, everybody out in YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter land. So welcome. I was hoping I could have drug you into the studio, but I know your busy schedule. And for those of you who are listening and tuned in and you don't know who Gaylen McKinney is, you need to crawl from up under that rock you've been under. Uh, not only is she an awesome person, but she is one hell of a drummer.
Why,
So
thank you.
yes, and coming from a an extremely musical family, your father, your mom, Auntie Carol, Carlos,
Right.
the list goes on. I'm sure there are names that I don't know. Looking at your bio, started at the age of 2.
I count from when I got my first drum kit,
When
and
I
that's
on
when I got it, when I was 2 years old. So, yep,
um,
my mother,
playing on your
she,
pots and pans. Is
yeah,
that how
well,
you start?
I unfortunately I was banging on my mother's dining room table too, so she didn't like that too much, and that's why I got the drum kit.
Okay, at this moment, I'm having some difficulty hearing you.
Uh-oh.
So 1 second. So give me one moment, Gaylen.
Okay. I'll check on my end too. Check, check. One, two, three. Yeah, my end is okay.
1 second, having some technical difficulties here. So Gaylen,
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I'm still here, but I can't hear you.
Um, let's see. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can barely hear you, so I got to see if they can turn the volume up here in the studio.
Okay.
So if you can give me one moment,
All
we'll be
right.
back. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. That's much better.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that technical difficulty. But no, you started playing at the age of 2. Were you kind of pulling your mom's pots and pans out the cabinet playing? Is that how it was, or were you actually on a drum kit at the age of 2?
Well, I at first I was beating on my mother's dining room table. She didn't like that too much. I think that's why I got the drum set. But I did beat on, according to my neighbors, I did beat on pots and pans too. But I think I get the feeling that I was whatever I had in my hand, I was using that for drumsticks on whatever surface was available, and so that's why I got a drum set at two.
Wow. Oh, okay. Now, have you played any other instruments other than the drums?
Yes, when I was in fourth grade, I of course joined the band, and of course the first thing they give you is a clarinet.
Mm-hmm.
So I played that for a little bit, but I didn't particularly care for it too much. I mean, I liked the clarinet; it just wasn't my cup of tea. And then I saw this beautiful golden. I was looking at my music folder, and on the cover was this beautiful golden saxophone. And I said, "Ooh, I want to play that." so, so my father. I had a friend named Farouk Zibay. Some of you out there may remember him. He was a saxophonist. And so when I guess he must have told him that I was interested in the saxophone. So Farouk, with his wonderful self, he had a spare tenor sax. So he let me play on his tenor sax, which of course at that time was too big for me. And so when I went back to school, I saw the alto, and I said, "Ooh, let me try that." So my dad let me, at that time you could rent your instruments and take them home.
Mm-hmm.
So he let me take an alto home, and I started playing that, and it was the right size for me. And so I started playing that. I had to do a challenge for first chair, and after actually the fifth grade is when he let me switch from clarinet to saxophone, the music teacher, and there was a challenge for first chair, and I decided I was going to take the challenge, and I did get that first chair.
Oh, oh,
So
was
I
challenge.
ended up playing, yeah, I ended up playing first chair on saxophone from fifth grade until about sixth grade, and
Okay.
then in sixth grade, Dad bought me an alto saxophone, which I still have today. It was a Yamaha student model, but the Yamaha student models back then were really good quality, so it's still in my possession to
Wow.
this day. And but I was still playing drums at home, but I was playing, like I said, saxophone in concert and marching band. And one time I ended up playing drums in high school because the drummers went on strike for some reason. They were mad at the professor, and we
Oh,
had this show coming up, and the drummers like, "We're not gonna play." So I ended up playing. I ended
oh.
up getting off the saxophone and
Mhm.
playing snare drum that day, and ended up with a nice big purple bruise on my leg from the snare drum hitting up against my leg. Probably didn't have it strapped on right, but so I ended up with a nice black and blue bruise from marching on that with the drums that day. But yeah, most of my school playing was done on saxophone, and then when I got to high school, I did end up getting playing drums in the jazz band. So I was playing saxophone in the concert band and drums in the jazz band.
Wow. Do you think you'll ever pick sax back up again?
Well, I don't know. Every night, every blue moon, I'll pick it up, and then I can play everything I know and remember for about 5 minutes before my lip goes flat. And it's so strange because I used to be able to play saxophone for hours, like two hours at least, 3 hours, 4 hours. I could sit, play the saxophone. Now I can barely play it for 5 minutes. So yeah, so I don't know. I don't think I'll be playing it out anymore. And I played it out a lot too, because
Mhm. Mhm.
in in my teenage years, I joined a band called Foresight, which my friend Byron Johnson was the drummer, and so I was the saxophone player. So we were playing stuff like Jeff Lorber Fusion, and
Oh,
um,
wow.
I was playing sax on that, and we played at Le Cave, club called Le Cave, which was in near downtown, and I ended up getting a write up in the paper
Oh,
about my saxophone playing. So I guess I was pretty good back then.
wow.
But yeah, but when college, I got to college, drums took over.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. So Oakland University,
yeah,
and now you're teaching at Oakland University.
yeah. I went full circle. Oakland has been a part of my life since I was about 13 because
Mhm.
in the 70s, late 70s, my well, actually, yeah, early mid 70s, I guess. Um, I used to go up there with my dad, who was teaching, who was doing what I'm doing right now. He was teaching applied piano lessons, and so he would do it like once a week or so. And when he went up there, I would go with him,
Right.
and it was a nice ride too, because Ray Bradbury, I think it was called, the stories that come on the radio. These great stories would come on the radio while we were taking our ride up to Oakland, and it was just a nice experience, riding in the car and listening to that, and then getting up there and playing my saxophone, because that's what I was doing. I took my sax up there, and I would sit in with the beginning jazz band. They had three big jazz bands, and they had a beginning band, an intermediate band, and a big advanced big band under the direction of Doc Holliday. And it was just a booming program. Marcus was teaching up there. Dad was teaching up there. Racy Biggs went to school there.
Mm-hmm.
It was slamming. And one time I went there with him and was sitting in with the big band, and Dizzy Gillespie came through and
Oh,
sat in with us.
wow.
Yeah, but that was a trip. I was like, "Oh my God, that's Dizzy!" And
Oh,
so he so he sat in with us while I was, sitting in with the beginning big band. He sat in with us, and I was like, "Whoa, I'm
wow.
going to this school. I am definitely going to this school."
Oh my God. That
That's
beat right there had to be just, oh my God, the icing on the cake.
Yeah, that was it for me. I'm like, yeah, this is the school I'm going to. But of
Wow.
course, 4 years later, by the time I got there, things had drastically changed,
Right.
and Dad was no longer teaching there. Doc Holliday, the director, he was getting ready to retire. The bands were not. They were. I think it was one band instead of three, one big band. So it had changed quite a bit by the time I got there. But it was still cool. There was still a jazz program, and um, then for a while after Doc retired, the jazz program kind of fell apart after he left, and for about a good 7 or 8 years, there was no jazz at Oakland. There's no jazz department. Eh,
Oh,
Yeah, it was a trip. But then Mark Stone and somebody else came along and revived the jazz program, and so it's back in bloom now. So they asked me to teach there. So like I said, I went full circle from going up there with my dad, then going to school there, and now I'm teaching there. And Marion Hayden is there. She does combo, directs the jazz combo up there, and Chinello is up there. So it's a nice little program that's come back to Oakland. They got jazz minors now. So yeah, so yep, I'm back there again.
so kind of staying in that same vein of, I guess, the jazz program leaving and returning. I'm constantly hearing from just people in general that jazz is a dying art form, or it's either
Mm,
dying or dead. Um,
hmm
what are your thoughts on that? I mean, I know, you play jazz and things like that, but just to hear the naysayers constantly talk about, jazz is a dying art form and it's dead.
Uh-huh.
What do you say to those naysayers?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. Because jazz is not dead. Now, here's the thing that happens with jazz.
Hmm.
Uh, so in our parents' generation, jazz was the popular music. People danced to jazz. You know, that was the thing. They were dancing to jazz. That was the dance music.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So then our generation comes along, and we start getting into, because we grew up with, you know, Parliament Funkadelic and rock, you know, Yes, we, the rock group Yes, and um, Tom Sawyer, Rush, the group Rush, and you know all these rock groups, Led Zeppelin,
Mm-hmm.
and so you got the funk, you got the rock, and then you got jazz that was
Mm-hmm.
still alive.
Right. Yeah.
So what ended up happening, of course, was what that birthed was a music called fusion jazz, which Ralph Armstrong is a child of that
Yeah.
fusion jazz too. He's a traditional jazz player, but of course, you know, just like the rest of us, he got into some of this other stuff. So, you know, Return to Forever, Chick Corea, and those cats were starting to change the music a little bit. And so it became this hodgepodge of rock, funk, and jazz. So the traditional jazz was still there, but this new jazz was born. So, you know, that was going on and when we were in our generation. So now we go into a new generation, the generation under us, who came along with through the traditional jazz, because now traditional jazz is considered a classical music. It's a traditional jazz is a classical music because it's 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 you have to study it. You can't just jump in and play jazz. You have to actually study it. So out of that came this new generation of music, because now the generation, well, the tail end of our generation going into the new generation started listening to hip hop. Okay, so right
Yes.
about that time, the Run DMC and you know all those Kumo D and all those guys start hitting the scene. You know,
It changed the
and
music.
it was a rap was a kind of a, I felt like, was born from jazz too, because the way the rappers would flow over the music, it was kind of in some ways jazzy, you know, if they were, some of it was improvised, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So out of that came, here comes Robert Glasper and those kind of guys who are redefining
Mm-hmm.
jazz, you know, and the new generation is listening to this jazz. So jazz is not dead, it just evolves. It evolves, and the thing is, when people say jazz is dead, I think they're trying to say, talk about traditional jazz, but traditional jazz will never die. And the
Mm-hmm.
main reason is because kids always go study it. As long as there's kids that's being introduced to it and studying it, traditional jazz will never, it can't die, because that's the root of all of it. That's the root of all the jazz that's coming now is traditional jazz. As a matter of fact, traditional jazz is the root of a lot of things. You
Mm-hmm.
know, because a lot of
Absolutely.
the drummers of the 70s point blank said they studied jazz before they got into the rock, which is what made, you know, John Bonham and Neil Peart and Bill Bruford and some of those rock drummers so different in their sound, was because they were listening to jazz.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I don't know. People keep trying to kill jazz and kill it off, but it's not going anywhere, because as long as young people are studying it, and as long as it's in the universities and kids are interested in it, it's going to keep going. And you
Mm-hmm.
have these young cats like Trinino, who's playing tonight down at Baker's. You got
Yeah.
Trinino and my godson Tariq and
Mm-hmm.
Lewis and all those guys
Yeah.
who they want to swing. You know,
Yeah.
Alan Dillard, they still want to swing. So
Yeah.
as long as that happens,
Mm-hmm.
jazz will never die, because if young people are playing jazz, young people are going to go see jazz.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm starting to see a lot of at Baker's too, is
Mm-hmm.
that there are some young faces up in there. There's some 20 somethings and you know 30 somethings in
Yes, absolutely.
Baker's.
Yeah, that come religiously. Um,
Yeah.
because I know
So,
when I started hanging out down at Burt's on Thursdays for the jam sessions.
mhm,
And, I'm thinking, the bar is like 21 and up, but I would see these young cats kind of waiting in the wing, you know,
mhm,
to get on stage and play. And then that's where I first started seeing Trinino. And
Mm-hmm.
because I would see him in the corner, kind of like jumping up and down like a little jelly bean. It's like, I would see him, and I'm like, what is the story with this kid over here? I mean, he wouldn't stand still. And so I'm watching and I'm thinking, okay, okay, what is he gonna, come up here and play? Mary Had a Little Lamb kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
When he started playing, he blew the roof off.
Mm-hmm.
So and after that, I just became a big, huge fan, of Trinino. But what I like about the younger musicians that are coming up, that there are multi instrumentalists,
Mm-hmm.
and that was always fascinating to me. And kind of you as an educator in the music business, what students are you seeing? More male, more female? Kind of what's kind of the ratio that you're seeing?
Well, yeah, that's the sad part. We still dealing with mostly males. I don't have one girl student that I'm teaching right now.
Okay.
And Marion, she had one female based student, but she's I don't think she's there anymore. So she doesn't have any female students. And we just did a women in jazz dinner up at Oakland University a few weeks ago. It was me and Marion and Regina Carter,
Yeah.
and we were talking, we were all having this roundtable discussion about some of the things that the young ladies are still going through today, being such a minority in the jazz world, and in jazz groups in particular, and college bands is mostly males.
Yeah.
The good news is, though, a lot of the young males are showing a lot more respect towards the female musicians that are there. You still got a few that's knuckleheads, you
Yeah.
know. You're gonna always have some knuckleheads, but the
Right.
majority of the young males that are in bands with these young ladies actually, show them a lot of respect, and actually have camaraderie with some of the ladies. But it's definitely still rare. It's
Right.
definitely very rare um, occurrence to see more than two women in a band. If that, you may not see any. So
And I
it's,
mean, and yeah, what I love about, straight ahead, all girls, except, when Yancy was hanging out with you, with you ladies. But when you and I met and I would start going, to see you perform, sometimes the audience didn't know that there was going to be a girl, on drums. And,
uh-huh.
so when you would come in and set up, at first, they probably just thought you were like the tech, coming in, you know,
Hmm.
for a dude.
I, it,
And
it is. It's hilarious. I've been setting up, and I've been literally setting up, putting the drums on the thing, and somebody will come and say, "Oh, so what do you play? You sing?"
would be hilarious, because I would just sit there and then I'm just, listening to the different comments, that people would say. And so when you would get up there and you would start, oh my God, she's gonna play. Well, I hope she's some good. I don't know. She's a girl, she may not play that well.
Wow, you heard that for real?
I heard that I would hear it all the time. And, so now I would just kind of sit there and just kind of smile. I'm like, y'all just don't know. You know, y'all just don't have a clue as to what's about to happen. And I mean, even
Wow.
still today, at Baker's, people would just kind of be in awe, to see you playing drums. And kind of going back to kind of one of the points you made, by it still kind of being a very male dominated field. How have you, first of all, how have you maintained and lasted this long in the business? And second of all, how do you feel that you've gained the respect by being, a female in the music business?
um, Say the first part of that question again, because I want to make sure I
Oh
answer
no,
everything.
by it being a very, male dominated business, on the musician side and even behind the scenes, as a female, how have you, I guess what has made you kind of stick around? And second of all, how have you, I guess, maintained or gained the level of respect that you have in the business?
Okay. Well, I guess you could say one thing is perseverance. Um, the other thing is one of the things that my father told me immediately when he found out that I wanted to play drums was a couple. Well, he told me a couple of things. One was, well, if you're gonna play those drums, you're gonna have to play them like you mean it. You gotta make sure you know what you're doing, because there's a lot of people out here play drums, and a lot of guys out here play drums too. So if you're gonna play these, you're gonna have to make sure you practice and know what you're doing. And so I took that to heart, and I always have approached the drums uh, in the way in the thought of play it like you mean it, and make sure you know what you're doing, which is why I spent countless hours in the basement every day practicing. Two, one because I loved it, and two, I wanted to make sure that I was good. At least because I'm too modest to say I'm good, but I
Mhm.
want to make sure I was when people heard me, they would want to hire me. you know.
Well,
Um,
that modesty's got to go out the window. Right now at 6:27 p.m. on Thursday, that modesty is tossed out of the window. Period. Not exclamation point. You better stroke that ego, girl. I ain't
well,
playing with you.
yes, girl. I guess I'd never say that because there's so many great drummers out here, that I can't just be like, yeah, I'm good, because there's too many great drummers out there. But I know that I wouldn't be still working if I was not at least,
Hmm.
sufficient at what I'm doing.
Hmm.
but but so I think being a part of Straight Ahead also was helpful early on in my early days, having that support group of ladies who were also kick butt musicians. Marion.
Yeah.
Um, I remember when I first heard about Marion, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I got to play with her. I have got to play with her, because she was kicking butt, and Alina, she actually was in my mom's band
Hmm.
for a little while, so I had already kind of got wind of her.
Hmm.
So, when Mickey Braden called us and said, do you want to do this gig at Burt's? Uh, and I asked her who was in the band. She said Marion. She didn't have to say anything else. I was, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm definitely want to do that. Definitely want to do that. So
Absolutely.
that having those girls as a support group was nice, especially when we got signed to Atlantic Records and we started touring. It's funny back then. It was you think it's rare now to see women playing. It's a lot more common now than it was back then. And
Hmm.
these sound guys would look at us, kind of like, oh Lord, what these girls gonna do? Oh God, they be kind of having an attitude while they put stuff together. And then we would play like our lives depended on it.
Yeah.
And after the show, they were like, "Oh my goodness, yeah, you girls are really good," and they'd be just as nice. So perseverance and just demanding your respect by
Mhm.
knowing your craft
Yeah.
is probably what helped me and the rest of the girls
Mhm.
outside of Straight Ahead persevere. We just just respect, demanding respect.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean,
Respect.
yeah, talk about that one too. Just kind of because being on the side of the business that I'm on, I the things that I've seen. And thank you to you because if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be in the music business.
I know I twisted your arm.
Yeah, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, she twisted my arm, threatened me and everything. So, ladies and gentlemen, you are watching Jazz Cats on WJZZ Cool TV, and I am hanging out with drummer extraordinaire Gaylen McKinney.
Yeah.
Says, she comes from a musical family, and I'm just sitting here thinking. I think we were out. I think you and I were having dinner one day, and some music came on, and kind of moving, and I stopped moving, and so I told you the story that I had gotten thumped in the forehead one day at breakfast with my mom and dad. We were out at a restaurant, and whatever song came on, I was jamming to, and my dad thumped me right between the eyes because you're not supposed to dance at the table, you're not supposed to sing at the table, but on the other hand, growing up in a musical family, you couldn't understand, that concept. So I was just thinking about that. So I just kind of started laughing.
I'm
So
telling you, because it was a complete opposite for me. I'm dancing and tapping and doing everything else at the table.
so you mentioned respect,
Hmm.
and of course
And I,
it is.
and I, before you ask this next question, I got to say too,
Yes.
the other part of persevering is help from the male musicians. Uh,
Hmm.
all guys are not chauvinistic or sexist. Some guys look at you and say, "Oh, I like her because she can play." And
Hmm.
one of those guys, it was in Atlanta. Uh, his name is Zay, and he was the bass player for Speech from Arrested Development.
Hmm.
So he saw me playing and asked me to play with him at this event, and out of that, he asked me, "Did I want to go on tour with Speech from Arrested Development?" I was like, "What?" And
Wow.
so some guys look at you because you can play,
Hmm.
and another one of those guys is Ralph Armstrong. Because of him, I've gained a lot of opportunities because he believed in my playing, and he thought I was a good drummer, and he's given me all kind of opportunities. One of the biggest ones we're probably getting ready to talk about, but he gave me opportunities to play with Roy Ayers, and he hooked me. He's the reason why I ended up going on tour with Benny Golson, and so not all guys are you shouldn't be doing this because you're a woman. Some
Hmm.
guys actually look at you and say, "Oh, you're a really good drummer. I'm gonna let you. I want to give you this opportunity." So I want to make that clear too. You know.
No, and I applaud, those gentlemen who don't, look at you as a helpless quote unquote little girl that don't know what you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. And my hat goes off to those gentlemen. But yes, kind of going into the your opportunity to play with the Queen of Soul,
Yes.
Franklin, God rest her soul.
God rest her soul. Yeah.
And the running joke is you were one of the musicians that never got fired by Aretha. And heard it so
Woo!
heard it, of course, I've heard it so many times, but it's still funny, to hear, Ralph with the stories, and everything. So how, I know you mentioned Ralph, but kind of how did you ace that opportunity to play with Aretha?
Well, and I'm gonna be honest. My journey with Aretha actually started when I was 17 because my father, God rest his soul, he just called me one day out and said, "Yeah, we got a gig, sweetheart." And I said, "Oh yeah." He said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, where's the gig at?" And he said, It's at Aretha Franklin's house. I looked at him like, I'm sorry, who? He said Aretha Franklin. I said, you know Aretha Franklin? He said, oh yeah, we go way back. I
Oh
said,
my.
really? He said, yeah, those things that you never, since you never talk to your parents about their life, there's things you just don't know. And I wish I had that's one thing I wish I would have done was really delve and talk to him and had him delve into his life because I had no idea he knew Aretha Franklin. so we went over her house and it was me, my Uncle Ray, Daddy's brother,
Mhm.
and I think was it a trio? Yeah, it was just me, my dad, and Uncle Ray, and we were playing a trio at her house. We was in the basement, and I met her brother Cecil and Carolyn, and she was in the kitchen doing making us some stuff, and it's a nice party. It was really nice,
Oh,
and so that was when I first met her, was at that time, and then in 2004, she was doing the Detroit Jazz Festival, and her management
mhm.
asked me called and asked me to play. She had because she started out doing jazz in her early in her career. So I she called me to do the jazz half, and I'm pretty sure she didn't know I could do R&B. So
Mhm.
she asked me to play jazz half, and her regular drummer, I think his name is Nate, was doing the R&B half. So that was the second time. Well, first time I got to play with her,
Mhm.
and I remember the song she did, Cherokee, and she gave me a song, and she said, "All right, girl." That was like all I could do was smile. I was like, "Oh," she said, "All right." so, that happened in 2004, but in 2006, uh, Ralph told me that she uh, she had go through her thing where she started using different people. So she asked Ralph about me
Uh-huh.
and whether he thought I could do that
Yeah.
her show, and he said, "Oh yeah, call her up."
Mhm.
And so I'm driving down Ford Road on my way to 275, and my phone rings, and I look at the phone and it says no name. I said,
Mhm.
"Oh no, I'm not answering that call." Oh no, no, I don't answer no name calls. But
No.
then, this little birdie in the back of my head said, you should answer that call.
Oh,
And
yes.
I'm like, but it's a no. Okay, let me answer this phone. So
Yeah.
I answered it. I said, hello. And she said, Galen. I said, sounded like not my mama gone. My mama gone, so I know it was not my mama. But she sure sounded like my mama. I said
Oh,
yes, and said, she
oh.
said, "This is Aretha," and
Mhm.
I'm holding the phone, going,
Mhm. Aretha. Uh-huh.
and I guess it dawned on her that since I didn't respond, she probably thought to herself, this girl don't know who she's talking to. So she said, Aretha Franklin. I said, Aretha Franklin. I said, okay, hold on. Let
Mhm.
me please pull over because I cannot drive and
And
talk to you at the same time. So I pulled my car over and she just started rattling off. She said, oh, "Okay, so what's gonna happen is you're gonna there's a tour coming up, and you're gonna do this and that and another. And this is songs we're gonna do blah blah blah." I'm trying to type this in my phone, and she's like, "And then we're gonna have a rehearsal with the music director at what is it the Southfield Towns or whatever the heck that hotel called, and it's gonna be tomorrow." Blah blah. She rattled off this
oh,
whole list of stuff, and I said, "Woo," I said, "Okay." And she said, "All right. So I'll see you later." I said, "Okay." Click.
and the screaming on the side of the road commenced.
Okay. I was like, "Oh my God, Aretha Franklin called me on the phone to ask me to play with her. Oh my God." So yeah, that was a good day. That
Oh,
was a good day.
that was, and you said that was in 2000.
That was actually 2000, like tail end of 15 going into
Oh,
16.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you stick around like that with playing with her?
Well, girl, all I know is as soon as I found out I was playing with her, I immediately started studying her music because it's funny about her music. Now I have played "Respect" and all, and a whole bunch of other of her, uh, a whole bunch of other of her songs over the years. With other people, jamming, playing them songs,
Right.
but and nothing like when you actually hear her arrangement. You like, I thought I knew this song. I don't know this song. so, so I just started really diving in and eating, living, and breathing Aretha Franklin,
Mhm.
and so that I would be prepared, try to, as close as I could be for the rehearsal. I knew she had charts and stuff, which that was a whole nother issue, but the
Mhm.
charts, of course, the arrangements on the chart are different than the record, so that's always interesting when that happens. But I just tried to do the best I could, and to play her music the way she wanted it played. I made sure to watch her, because when she did this on stage, I mean, she wanted either slower or faster tempo, so I was always paying attention to that.
Okay.
And I just paid attention to her in general, whatever, while paying attention to the director and the music. I always made sure I looked at her too,
Right.
So I don't know.
Mhm.
I'm glad that she liked me that way, and I'm glad glad I didn't get fired.
Oh, we love.
I could have.
Yeah, oh, I'm sure. No, we love that.
Yeah, I
And
tell you, I definitely I was a part of a massacre, so I know that I was one of I was a lucky one.
that one will go down in history with that one.
Oh my
You,
goodness.
Ralph said he got fired 30 times. For
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But she liked Ralph. She'd always call him back.
oh yeah, yeah, that was his buddy,
hmm
buddy. And in your bio, Hillary Clinton, how did that go? How was that event for you?
Oh yeah, that event happened at Dave, the owner of the Pistons. I can't think of his last name, but his first name is Dave. And so it was his son and I think his wife who were hosting a fundraiser for
Hmm.
when Hillary Clinton was running for president. They were hosting a fundraiser at their house, and they asked Aretha to come sing, and so that's how it happened. And I was, still her drummer. Thank goodness, I was still I was still her drummer. So I ended up playing at the event, and that's ended up. I have a nice picture to show for it with
Yeah.
Hillary and Aretha and the band and the director. There was a video floating around of that performance on my on YouTube, and I thought I saved it to my YouTube page, but I think someone deleted it, so
Oh,
you can't see it anymore. Yeah,
oh, I'm sure it's floating around somewhere.
yeah.
I'm sure
But
we
yeah, it was cool because Hillary she was all in the groove of it. She was clapping. She's- and she was having a good time. Yeah,
that
she was having a good time.
that is amazing. So
hmm
let's kind of wrap up talking about your music, your CDs, kind of, where the inspiration comes from to create music.
Oh, well, the inspiration comes definitely from my parents and my family, because I was born in it, and my father was constantly creating music.
Hmm.
Um, and from a very young age, like the CD that I just put out called Zoot Suit Funk. One of the songs on that CD, um, I wrote back a long time ago when I was in college. Um, but I had been writing music since I was little. I mean, well, I should say composing on the piano because I do play piano,
Hmm.
but don't ask me to do a gig though.
Turn it off.
No,
Turn it.
don't ask me to do a gig.
Turn
Yeah,
it.
you'll be very unhappy. But but I do use the piano to compose music,
Mhm.
and I have enough knowledge on chords to compose music, and so it's definitely a gift because when a song comes to me, usually the whole song,
Mhm.
bass line, melody, chords, everything comes all at once. And then it's my job to sit at the piano and try to pick each part out.
Sure.
And now I have Garage Band, so I can put each part in
Okay.
Garage Band and make the whole song. And so but I've been composing. Like I have a song that I'm probably gonna put on my next record that I probably made when I was about 12 years old.
Mhm.
That I said I'm gonna, I'm gonna do something with that song on this next CD I put out, and I'm
Okay.
gonna call it. The song is gonna be called Insurrection. Because
Ooh.
I didn't have a name for it. It was just a song that I used to always play on the piano, but now it has a name, and I'm getting ready to do something with it. But I wrote that years ago, so it's always been a part of me. Music is just I've been so steeped in it
Yeah.
that it composing and coming up with music is just a natural a part of it for me.
Hmm. And so this last CD, Zoot Suit Funk, and everybody, if you don't have it, go get it, please, because
Hmm.
it's a really funky CD. Some great songs and everything. So, kind of what inspired the title?
Oh yeah, and yeah, I need to clarify that too because you know when you put the word funk at the end of a song, people have this conception of what what it's supposed to sound like, you know,
Exactly.
and it sounds very different than what most people think it's supposed to sound like. So the explanation for the title of that song is has nothing to do with the actual rhythm of the song, but everything to do with the zoot suit itself and how funky it is. Uh, when I and the way the title came to my head is when the song came to my head, the image of Spike Lee's movie Malcolm X, and that scene where I think it was Denzel Washington
Hmm.
and it might have been Spike. They were in these zoot suits and they was pimp, they had that walk going and they had their hand in their pocket, and it was funky to me. I was like, ooh, they got that fun going on with them zoot suits and you know, so it was a swingy funky to me. So so since that image came into my head at the same time the song did, I decided to call it Zoot Suit Funk. So it
Right.
was really more about the zoot suit and the attitude that they had back then while wearing those zoot suits. It was a funky, swingy attitude that they had, when they were wearing those zoot suits, and that's why I named it that song. Named that song that, because
Yeah.
it had to me it's like the rhythm of it. It reminded me of that walk.
The cool swag.
Yeah, thank you. The cool swag. So that's why I named it Zuzu for.
And you stepped out of your comfort zone with the styling on this particular record as well.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah. Well, the thing is, my father wrote in more of the traditional jazz vein, even though he stepped outside of the box too, because when he did that arrangement of Freedom Jazz Dance, that wasn't traditionally done, or Ode to Africa, that wasn't really traditional. So he didn't put himself in a box, and he told me not to either. But I do write in more of the funkier style, or because I grew up fusion. I grew up in the fusion and the Parliament funkadelic, and I like traditional jazz, but I never write in that style because well, for one thing, my chords are not as complex as a lot of jazz musicians or my father. My chords tend to be more on the simpler side, so I gravitate to more the groovier and funkier style of writing.
Hmm.
I did write one jazz song though, called "Daddy Song" for Shreddy Head back in on our second. Is our second CD? Yeah, I think it's our second CD. I wrote a song called "Daddy Song," and that was straight up swinging. And I
Right.
did write also on my very first CD called "It's About Time." The song on there called "It's About Time" is a swing tune in five. So I can write in that style, but I gravitate more towards the funkier style of writing. So that's why it's this one sounds a little
Mm.
different.
Yeah, so pick it up if y'all don't have it, download it. She has CDs with her and everything, so y'all better pick it up.
Yep,
Uh,
I have them tomorrow. I play it. I play with Ralph Armstrong on Fridays and Saturdays, and I always have my CDs. So if you want one, come see me.
yes, please do. Couple of other questions before we wrap up. What advice would you give to younger girls wanting to get into the music business, primarily the jazz side of business? Or
Hmm.
music rather. What advice would you give them? If they were to, kind of run into, kind of some of the chauvinistic type men in the business.
Well, for one thing, stand up for yourself. That's the first thing. And also remember, you don't have to take that. If you're in a situation where, there's somebody in the band that's really being disrespectful, the first thing you do is stand up for yourself and tell them that, hey, this is not cool. I don't appreciate it. What you're doing. Don't feel like you have to take it. Don't feel like, well, I guess I need to just deal with this so I can get ahead because you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. You could just find another situation to be in because there's many situations that you can be in. You don't have to deal with disrespect. That's the one thing I would tell young ladies is you don't have to deal with the disrespect.
Hmm.
You know, and if your talent is uh, up to par and top notch, you take your talent somewhere else and find someone else who will appreciate you for your talent.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So upcoming Bakers Friday and Saturday
Yep. Friday and Saturday
with
this
Ralph
week.
Armstrong, 7 to 10.
Yep. 7 to 10.
And y'all haven't gone to 11 yet.
No, no, we're not. No. Shh, shh. Hush your mouth and get away.
7 to 10. 7 to 10. But no, it was like with the second set, the music is sounding so good, and we don't want you guys to stop. So,
I know. I know.
but y'all just got to get there at 7 o'clock so you can get, a good 2 hours, two and
That's
a
right.
half hours of some excellent music
Yes. Yes.
with one of the baddest female drummers on the planet. Yeah, we've got, Sheila E is out there and, Terry Lynn, but we got Gayleen McKinney here.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
She is our superstar.
Thank you.
So, Gayleen, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking time to hang out with me today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. And I will see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. And hopefully I see y'all tomorrow too.
Yes. That one she's a vocalist as well, everybody. So, you know, you didn't mention that earlier, but she's a vocalist as well.
One day y'all might see that. Y'all really might.
Yeah.
Actually, I am singing on my record, so if you
Hmm.
get Zoot Suit Funk, you'll hear me do a little singing on that CD.
Yes. Thank you, my dear.
Thank you.
And I will see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Have a good night, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.